Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I've got a really interesting conversation tonight that I think is going to be quite fascinating. Mark Smallwood is my guest. He is an executive coach and strategy director. He works on transforming leaders into high performers, specializing in career advancement coaching for executives. He's also a historian. And the last time I had Mark on the show, we talked about parallels between what was going on now versus World War II and the war in Europe at the time, and the land-based war in Ukraine going on right now. But then, just a couple weeks ago, I noticed that Mark started a new thing on Substack. What he's doing is he's talking about guidance for men in online dating. So, how does a guy go from being an executive coach to a historian that is making parallels between World War II, Russia, Ukraine, to online dating? Mark Smallwood, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much, Brian. Great to be here again. And that's a great question. I would preface it by saying I have broad interests and I get bored easily. So I'm always thinking about, is that interesting? Is that interesting? Is that interesting? And at this stage of my life, in the tail end of my 50s, I have learned a lot about myself and a lot about relationships. And I felt it might be the time to begin to share some of that learning with other people, because there's common themes between helping someone perform at their best in a business setting, helping someone perform their best in a sports setting, calling out dictatorship or bullying, cowardice, wherever you see it, and at the same time helping people think about themselves when they step back into the dating pool, usually after a relationship breakdown at the middle stage of one's life, or a loss. And I just felt I had something to say, and I have a good use of the English language, so I try and say that with a sense of wry observation and humour.
Excellent. Well, I read, I guess, the one that you had posted and sent to me, and it was extremely funny, I have to tell you. So, what are you doing? You're providing like one-on-one coaching, or a how-to book, or what is it?
Well, I'm actually in the middle of three books. So one is Journey to Resilience. That's really helping people to look at the lessons that life presents to them through the lens of looking at some of my early life mistakes and errors and faux pas. And it makes it quite safe for other people to think about their own without them judging themselves too harshly. So that's book number one. That's almost completed. I have another one, which is the how to deal with the great online dating con, which the stories you will have been looking at and listening to will seamlessly feed into. And that's really about when you think about coming back into the dating pool, which for some people is a little too soon after a relationship loss. One should really think about it like it's day one induction at a new job. Really, you want to be shown what's going on. You want someone to not quite hold your hand, but walk you through the process. But the world as we have it today with online platforms give us the feeling of safety because you're not directly in front of somebody else. And they also give you the perception of a lot of choice. You can go out there and look, and nobody's judging you if you're swiping right, swiping left, or whatever the various different apps do. It, however, completely depersonalizes the experience. And if you're looking for anything other than an extremely transient, transactional, casual moment in time, you can find yourself disappearing, if you like, down the Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole. You think it's safe, you put your toe gently in the water, and before you know it, you're drowning in what's going on. And I think having been through that process myself, and understanding with the beauty now of looking back on it, what happened, why it happened, what my mistakes were. I just felt that that would be really entertaining and useful to help other people to look at, rather than just being a story I might tell a few friends, female or male, while we're sitting together having dinner. So that was really what started it. And then a few of my female friends who I trained with said, oh, you have to do this. You have to do this. There are so many people at this stage of life going through the same problems. And I think particularly my female friends said, you can get advice from their female friends on do this, do that, do the other, but they're not really coming at it from a man's perspective with an insight, a deeply personal insight into the male psyche. So I just felt that that was the differentiator, and the skills I've developed over a lifetime with coaching others have allowed me to give some fairly difficult messages in a very positive way, so that people take on board the tenor of the message rather than take offense at the delivery.
Messages to men that are online dating.
Well, I would say more messages to women from a man about what to look out for if you're going through online dating, and how to be certain that you know what you're really doing. And if I think about my lessons, I should probably have avoided online dating for a year, year and a half after I came back onto the market, and put some time and effort and energy into getting really comfortable within myself. And I think most people don't do that. They're usually rushing out there because they want to feel better about themselves, and they are waiting for somebody else to do that for them. And I certainly, I'm sharing some of the more entertaining episodes through my writing. I went on some first dates where the questions you got asked, you might expect to get asked that in an interrogation rather than a first meeting. So there were some real doozies, is the way I would describe
Okay,
it. And
okay,
I
okay,
think
okay, okay. But
sharing that
how does
information.
how does
Go on.
all that connect? A book on resilience in a career, a book on guidance online dating have to do
Yes,
with guidance for us, which you shared with us, I think, incredibly well last time we chatted on
thank you.
we need to look at history better, otherwise we're going to have another land war. Like, I don't understand the connection.
Well, let me try and pull that together for you. So, when you're looking at global history, or the history of what's happened in human conflict, firstly, you have to look at what the situation was, what the root causes were, how those root causes morphed into the situation where a conflagration would start, and what the consequences of that were, and how quickly humanity forgets, so that we find ourselves back in this situation again. And to touch on the situation in Ukraine, the electoral cycle in America at the moment, you just have to look at the behavior and the language that's used to realize that most people have not paid any attention to history. The link, when you're talking to people in professional context around career development, around personal development, is almost identical if the root causes are different. It's the behavior that's identical and thinking that's identical. Usually when you're talking to somebody, they come to you with an issue that they haven't been able to resolve themselves, and that's about perspective, or sometimes call experience. And you normally get them to look at what they're trying to achieve, then look back at everything that's gone on over time, what their behaviors look like, which part of that they directly own. So the bit they can control entirely themselves, they're not reliant on somebody else to make those changes. Then the areas where they can influence, so where they need other people to get involved, and the areas where they have neither control nor influence and they just have to accept. And that has been a very effective tool helping people develop over many, many years. It is identical in online dating, except the roadmap is slightly odd. The advice I got from male friends when I first came back on the market is get out there. It's like riding a bike, get back on the horse, do all of this, do all of analogies that were utterly unhelpful. Um, and there's a perception from the female friends that you're really out there just looking for one thing, which may be true for some people. In my case, it wasn't, and I don't want to overly generalize for others. But what I realized is until I went back and looked at how I'd ended up in relationship A, relationship B, relationship C, which bits of that were directly related to the choices I was making, and how I could begin to make better choices for myself. There is an absolute link between what's going on in the world and behavior, what goes on in someone's professional life and behavior, and what goes on in someone's personal life and behavior. And I think the thing I probably find most interesting is no one goes through their childhood utterly unscarred, no matter what anyone says. But it's why someone who encounters difficult situations makes a choice to get angry at the world and go out there and try and do one over on everybody. And if I look at the behavior of sort of grandiose narcissists, which a lot of people would say Donald Trump is, and a lot of people would say Vladimir Putin is, um, they've been through some difficult situations in early life and they've chosen to take it out on everybody else. You have other people who've been through exactly the same sorts of situations, some much worse, and yet they choose to be kind to themselves and to be kind to others. And they're not out there leading to the deaths of millions. One hopes in dating it's not deaths of millions, but certainly you can die 1,000 little deaths if you're getting things wrong, and it can really destroy your self esteem, both men and women. And I just feel from the advice my friends have given me and the reception I'm getting to what I write, I have a particularly useful voice to help ladies of perhaps middle years get a better insight into themselves and what they're trying to do if they are looking to find, relationship online, and how to frame that in a humorous way that enables them to look at themselves safely and recognize they have a big hand in the types of relationships they develop, as do men. That would be
Hmm.
the link from my
Okay,
perspective.
fascinating. I guess I understand where you're coming from in regards to Putin and maybe Donald Trump. But then
Mm.
you're suggesting that there's many what online females or males that are narcissistic, and that because they were scarred in young life, they want to come out and hurt someone. I got to take a step back. You posted a story
Please do.
on Substack that was a story about a lady that I thought was overly aggressive, a little bit strange with her treatment of her very unsanitary treatment of her dog, allowing her to share food with her and you, I guess, and very interested in commitment, like right away, very early on, but yet had a rule about sex. So commitment, no sex, eccentric, and it was to me, it was just that you get to meet strange
And
people. It
within that,
wasn't.
Brian, yeah, well, within that lies quite a damaged ego. So if you go to the third episode, which is floated out today, and obviously this is a nameless individual because my job is not out there to embarrass anybody. I've tried to make it very hard for anyone to possibly identify them. The story develops. Now, the real idiot in that story is me because the last story is about red flags and ignoring them. And there were endless red flags. You've just touched on a few in that explanation there. But I think I found myself at that position in my life purely in that area of my life because no impact on my professional life whatsoever. Um, Utterly blind to what was going on. I kind of had, it was like hearing a bell ringing a long way away. You turn your head and go, I think I can hear that, but I'm not quite sure. Um, Something that would not happen to me today because you have moved yourself to a different place, which requires self development and self reflection. These are things that you just do not generally see in narcissists. I sat at one date, we sat down as I handed over the coffee. Uh, the lady said, "Do you see yourself getting married again?" And I was so stunned, I went to you, which obviously went down very well. But what I was really trying to say is that's a very odd question to ask when you very first meet somebody. Now, from her perspective, I believe what she was trying to do is I don't want to waste time getting to know you if you're not interested in getting married. I would sit there and go, until I get to know you, why would I even entertain the idea that you might be somebody I want to have a long term relationship with? When I look at the behaviors that I see in the least desirable types of people, and I'm going to throw Trump and Putin into that pot, although they are exceptionally extreme examples, they do not care what you think. It's all about them. They will be kind and nice to you while it suits them to get what they want. They have no interests otherwise. And my experience in the dating pool was there were a disturbing number of those types of personalities out there, even if the impact is minute compared to the global macro impact that someone who's a leader of a country can have. So I understand it will seem like there's a bit of a disconnect, but there really isn't. The common element is knowing yourself, accepting your flaws, understanding which bits you can directly deal with yourself. And in the dating pool, you can avoid the people who would fall into the narcissistic category. On a global stage, it's difficult for all of us to avoid them, but one maintains one's hope and one beats the drum to ensure that that information gets out there. I think when you first come back and someone who would be an ideal potential candidate for reading the stuff I produce or for potentially, working through some of those issues is someone who recognizes there's things they want they can't get. They recognize they're vulnerable, but they don't really have a roadmap on how to do something about that. And the same link with a memoir about resilience, the same link about insights into online dating, the same links with when you're helping somebody step up through their career, the same links when you're analyzing what goes in the world and writing an insightful post or article about those things. You look at root causes, you look at the behavior that leads to them, you look at facts, and then you come up with a working hypothesis that people either buy into or they don't. So I would say there is a big link, although I understand for most people it's either this or it's this or it's this.
Fascinating. And the bottom line is understand yourself. That's interesting. We're going to take a break for some messages and be back in just 2 minutes with Mark Smallwood talking about, I don't know what we're talking about. We're talking about online dating. We're talking about Putin and Trump, and we're talking about resilience in your career. Oh my God, this is fantastic. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes with a executive coaching expert from England, Mark Smallwood. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Mark Smallwood. He is an executive coach and strategy director that transforms leaders into high-performance individuals. Coming to us from London, England, the UK. But we're talking about a whole bunch of other stuff today. We've learned that Mark is 80,000 words into writing a book on resilience in careers and in life. But he's also been commenting quite frequently on social media and in other places in regards to what's going on in Eastern Europe and comparing history. He's a history buff with World War II to today. And we've had Mark on and doing a really interesting show in that regard previously. But now he's into analyzing and discussing and writing about online dating, which is kind of fascinating. Mark, you've got a T-shirt on that says "Work harder." What's it about?
Yes, I have. It says nobody cares. Nobody cares work harder. It's natural for all of us to want to have a little complaint, usually in our own head, sometimes out there. It's not meant to be unempathic, but ultimately it's more a message for myself whenever I see it, to remind myself just to knuckle down and get on in life and not sit there and, think on the things that aren't going as well as I'd like, but to count that old saying, to count one's blessings. So it's a good reminder for me. Nobody really cares, just crack on. That's what I wear it for. I frequently forget I'm wearing it though, Brian. So thank you for noticing it. I should have probably covered it up.
So when you talk about resilience, is that one of the keys? Just to buckle on and nobody cares and get on with it?
Well, I'm my style or my favorite style of learning is either through observation or direct experience. So if I take this for a moment, one of my hobbies is CrossFit. It's not for everybody, but I quite enjoy it. And the things you have to do in CrossFit is you jump up, you hang off metal bars, and you try and do muscle ups and a whole host of other things. And those metal bars can really tear up your hands. So resilience within oneself is a bit like calluses or toughness in life. You don't get it by rubbing your hands with hand cream every day and not using them for anything. You tend to develop resilience through going through challenging situations. And the trick is to find within yourself the ability to process what is going on or to have a guide who will help you process what is going on so that you get the learning and adapt as opposed to get crushed and break. All of us have at some point or other been driving a car, probably on a country road, come round a bend and find something's in the way. And there's a moment where our hearts leap into our mouth, we stamp on the brakes, and we're sitting there thinking, please God, please God, please God, let me survive. And if you do, and one has to say, if you do, you're not in the learning place. You're just sitting there in a panic. And resilience is like a comfort zone. It doesn't get stronger by never stretching yourself. If the stretch is too big, you're panicking and you're not learning. So, really, the lessons I'm trying to share in my book is about how you put yourself in different situations or how you look back on things you've encountered throughout your life, whether you are a young person, whether you're, in your 20s, 30s, whether you're in middle age or whether you're in later years. And ultimately, I have found that people's resilience is higher when they have a sense of purpose and a sense of commitment to what they're trying to do in their life, whether that's commitment to family, commitment to career, commitment to a cause. That sense of purpose gives people meaning, and that meaning gives you the strength you need to develop your resilience. So that's a concurrent theme throughout my book, as is a desire for a sense of belonging in most people. I share a lot of stories from when I was very young up until I was in the military cadets when I was young, between the ages of 11 and 17. And on this particular, I started off writing about a 2 week experience with Joint Services Mountain Training Corps in Wales in the early 1980s. And it's expanded from there. And what I realized is my attraction to the cadets. I was away at school rather than home. So it was a boarding school, British boarding school, 70s and 80s. What I realized is I was probably seeking out a sense of home and a sense of belonging. And many of the ex-military individuals that I've spoken to over the years recognize that and have exactly the same driver. And then when they leave an institution, be it the army, be it something else, they suddenly feel themselves cut adrift. And within the desire to develop a sense of resilience and adaptability and that desire to feel you belong, ultimately the big lesson is you have to learn to love the person you are inside. And that would be true whether I'm coaching someone in their career, whether I'm coaching somebody on a personal level, because at that point, your home is within you. You're no longer seeking external validation to feel good about yourself. And that is also a very common theme when you look at some of the behaviors you find in the dating pool. I'm old enough to remember meeting people organically, standing shyly in the corner for ages, wondering whether I should go and talk to somebody, bucking up the courage. Occasionally, they talk back. Occasionally, you go down in flames. Online dating is just, to me, it feels like the gambling industry, Brian. We all need to believe if we're going to go in a casino that someone always beats the house and wins. And there are plenty of stories out there about so and so met online, and they're in a really happy relationship, and they're married, or they're having lots of fun, or they're doing this or they're doing that. But when you dig deep, I know nobody directly in my very wide circle who has a direct experience of success. And in many ways, the online dating agency has no interest in you succeeding and leaving, because then you don't need them anymore, and therefore you won't pay to be a member. So I think when I'm going to start poking very hard at the online dating industry, because of course they'll poke back, my feeling is they are very much preying on people's insecurities rather than actually being there to be of service and help people develop their relationships. So I know there are a number of themes there, but it's that drive for a sense of purpose. It's that learning from the difficult things you experience that enables you to become stronger and develop your resilience. It's maintaining fluidity and adaptability. And it's looking at the situation as it really is, not as you would like it to be, and learning to like yourself enough so that you are your safe place, you are your safe person, rather than looking for some other person to come and fix you. And at that point, generally, you're more likely to find more of what you're looking for. And that's, if you like, the fundamental message I felt I bring to the table that I can share with others that's of value.
Fascinating. So let's talk about career to start with, and then we'll morph into online dating. So
Please.
purpose. How do you find that sense of purpose?
Well, I think careers fall into a number of different stages. So I have a 25-year-old who finished university 2 years ago. He joined the workplace not for his forever job. He just did it and was like, oh, they made me expect me to work for money. This is outrageous. Um, and it takes time to work out where you feel you can add most value in the world. And I think there are things that we enjoy, and there are things that we can do where we feel we are fulfilling what we were put on this earth to do, whatever your beliefs about how the world's developed and whether there's a God or not a God, or whether you believe in this version or that version. Ultimately, you notice the people that seem most happy in life are those that have a sense of service. So I get a huge buzz out of helping other people and seeing them develop. Yes, I make a career out of that, but that's almost ancillary. The thing I get is the sheer joy of helping others and seeing them progress, whether that's my children over the years, whether that's friends, whether that's clients, whether that's a stranger I meet on the streets. And little acts of kindness for me are what enable me to feel topped up and have energy to hand out to other people as I need it. So I'd say, in a career way, of course, we have to make money. Of course, we're looking to build a life, whether that's on our own or not. Of course, we need a roof over our head and we need food on the table. But once those basics are dealt with, once you look at the old Maslow's hierarchy of needs, once you've sorted out the basics, what is life about? And it's about learning about yourself and learning about others. And I think for me, when I look at the people who I would describe as evil on this world, it is only and always about themselves. They really don't care whether, if they need you to have X so that they get what they want, they'll live with that, but they really don't care. You look at the people who have made the most positive changes to humanity, or the most positive changes to each of us in our own lives, they're people who take the time, who hear us, who help us develop our thinking and help us guide us along the way. So I believe a sense of purpose comes from helping others, not always for free, not just walking around with some monk's outfit on or some nun's outfit just doing good, but going out there and fundamentally trying to make somebody else's life better. That
Okay.
is where I think most people will find their sense of purpose.
Okay. And then the second thing you said was you need a commitment. So in a career, do you have to commit to that career?
Well, there's a lot of empirical evidence that to develop expertise takes quite a lot of time. I think they say something like 10,000 hours. If I think about, when you first join a new organization or a new career, your enthusiasm levels are usually very high because you've chosen to join. Your ability to add value is usually moderately low, certainly in the early stages of one's career. So usually when you're there for a little while, you realize, oh God, there's also problems here. This person's also maybe not so lovely. That seems crazy. Why do we do things this way? And your commitment can drop, but your competence levels come up a little bit. And I think if you are not prepared to commit to becoming very competent at something, you're never really going to succeed at it. Most people, and I think my feeling, without beating social media, because here we are talking on a podcast with a medium we'd never been able to do before. We've met through comments on LinkedIn. So there are elements that make the world much smaller and much more interesting, and information can be shared much more freely. But I think I see a lot of people who are looking for very quick fixes. You have people who will take a pill to diet rather than change their diet and exercise. You have people who want to make a fortune online doing A, B, C, or D, and good luck to them if they can. But at the same time, they're not putting in the fundamentals. And I would say commitment to becoming competent, ideally more than competent, but commitment to becoming competent is just as important as that sense of purpose. That sense of purpose helps you develop that commitment.
And then you said fluidity. What do you mean by that?
Hmm. If you choose, I had an interesting conversation with someone the other day. They're very detail centric, brilliant. They're very structured. Um, their thinking was quite linear. There's no crime in that, but it just makes it very difficult for them to adapt to changing circumstances at pace. And the world we live in today requires that ability to adapt and the ability to think at pace. So when I talk about fluidity, I'm not talking about fluidity of commitment. I'm talking about the ability to quickly adapt to changing situations. And if we look evolutionary, those are the types of individuals, those are the species that have prospered over time, because that ability to adapt in changing circumstances is one of the critical skill sets that certainly, I've worked really hard to ensure my children understand and have developed. And I know certainly throughout my childhood, the way it came to me was through different lessons, but that ability to adapt quickly was key to, in some cases, survival in the early days, without question. So that's what I mean by it.
And then how all that applies to online dating, I guess, is kind of interesting. We're going to take a break for some messages and we're going to switch from career advice to online dating advice. Stay with us, everyone. Really kind of interesting chatting with Mark Smallwood about how he compares careers and online dating and even history together. I'm not sure yet, but it's kind of interesting, Mark. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Mark Smallwood. He comes to us from London, England, the United Kingdom. He's an executive coach and strategy director. He specializes in transforming leaders into high performance roles. Mark, if people want to access you, do you have a website they should go to, or how can they best follow you?
Yes, I'm pretty prolific on LinkedIn, and also I've just begun on Substack. I've only been on there for about 5 6 weeks. I think I've got 15 different articles there. I split them into three different areas. So the resilience stuff we talked about. There is some stuff there for those who are caring for others. Some funny stories of some of my experiences, but the growing sector and the sector I seem to be getting most traction with is the one around online dating. So I think there's a voyeuristic element to that, or a vicarious element to that, Brian. So I can send the Substack link to you so you can pop it up with the podcast.
That'd be great. I've got to read for everyone the announcement of your, at least what I thought was your first post, ignoring online dating red flags and surviving the fallout. Midlife dating can feel like navigating a minefield. One wrong step and you're caught in the fallout. In this candid and humorous blog, I share my personal experiences of ignoring red flags, enduring surreal dates, and the harsh realities that followed. Is it that bad?
Yes. Yes, I think it is. And I think also the beauty of this is looking at one's own behavior, same as with the resilience and adaptability, looking at one's own behavior through the lens of somebody else's experiences. So I had a friend the other day who sent me a message saying, "I wish more men would send me messages like this," and it was extremely loving. And then I said, wasn't that person a dishonest con man narcissist? Well, yes. I went, so are you looking to date another one of those? Well, no, but I want a message like that. And we had a fun, sensitive, but quite direct conversation around that's not a real person. That's not a real emotion they've shared with you. They've endeavored to prey on your vulnerability to understand how they can get what they want out of you. And of course, you want to feel that great, big, encompassing love, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you start from a place where you are not being honest with yourself, then you are particularly vulnerable to someone who might wish to take advantage of you. And those usually are narcissists, by the way, of course. And we've talked about the impact of global narcissism, the dictators we've talked about. So I think the key message for me is yes, it can be awful. I remember another first date where I sat down with a coffee and the woman said, "How many houses do you own?" And I stunned and went, "I'm sorry." And she, "Well, I dated someone and he took advantage of me and took my money, and I don't want to do that again." And obviously, my response was, "I'm terribly sorry that happened to you. Was it me? No. Why is it relevant?" "Well, I had to sleep with a baseball bat by the bed." And I went, "That sounds awful. I don't think we should date." And I made my polite excuses and left. That individual clearly was still very damaged, and they are trying to defend themselves, but they're doing that in a way that will drive away people who might be a good match for them because they're scared. And fear is one of those big issues that gets in the way with dating, whether online or dating someone's friend or the rest of it. So I would say the lessons I'm trying to share with people are look at yourself, look at your own behavior, look at the bits you can directly control. You can't control whether you're going to meet someone who has a good soul or someone who's a conniving user. You can control whether you are open to receiving them by looking at your own behavior. And that's primarily the message I'm trying to give. And I'm giving it from the perspective of being a man and being raised in a challenging environment through a majority of my young life. So I am particularly good at spotting difficult behavior in other men, which seems to be something many women have more challenge with. So that's, I feel, why I'm quite a good coach in that area for that sector of the market.
Mark, if you're talking about midlife online dating or dating in general, midlife, you talked about
Mm-hmm.
people have typically come out of a relationship, whether it's because of a death or because of a divorce or a breakup or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. Given
Mm-hmm.
those kinds of situations, isn't everyone damaged to a certain extent?
Without question, because your sense of security has been removed or pulled from under your feet. So it's not that it's a unique situation that someone's damaged. It's just that same link I was talking to you about earlier in the program around why is it somebody experiences a difficult situation and decides they're going to get everybody else to pay them back for that situation? Why is it somebody else looks at themselves and decides they're just going to be kind but not be walked over? And I think a lot of people don't take the time to look at themselves and heal. Heal is probably a great word because there is an element of emotional healing that's going on within there. And, no relationship ends if it's not through the passing of somebody because you're getting on fantastically well. So usually you're okay. And then there's a whole period where your self esteem gets eroded, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman. And you come out of that a little bit like a broken toy. And really, you should be spending time to get yourself right. A bit like if you've broken a leg, you don't immediately go out and try and run a marathon the next day. You've got a cast on, you have to do things differently. You get yourself right that first day in a new company. You don't turn up knowing where everything is and how it's going to work. But people don't tell you that. And the whole online dating sector is about safety, and there's rules, and we protect you, and you have choice, and you can put your foot in, and you can feel attractive again, and you can feel this, and you can feel that. So, having been through that whole process, having experienced it from and I would say I've certainly had many negative experiences, and I take full responsibility for those because I should have never been there in the first place. That I feel is the bit that's missing for people when they come out. And you can't rely on your friends to do it. In the example you're talking about, I had a friend, a nameless male friend, who gave me terrible advice. And I was in such a dicky position that I listened to it, even though it didn't sound right to me. You can't rely on friends to give you good advice. You need to be your own best friend, is how I would describe it. And if you can't do that, or you haven't got that around you, having access to some information that enables you to have a laugh, go, glad that wasn't me. But at the same time, learn about your own behavior by looking at somebody else's experiences. That's a win.
But if you need to heal, and as you said, to build resilience, you gotta or purpose, you've got to invest 10,000 hours. You got to have a lot of practice and stuff like that. Why isn't the advice of get back on the horse and get out there and give it a shot the right advice? Why do you have to sort of escalate the the level to being the person's got to be perfect before you go out for a first date with them? Why can't you just kiss some frogs before you meet the princess?
Well, even if you get yourself in a great place, you are going to kiss some frogs, whether you're meeting the princess or the prince. That's just life. But if you're going out there bleeding out of three holes in yourself and you're expecting somebody else to take you out, you just do not have the emotional resilience to handle average behavior, let alone unpleasant behavior around you. And I know that's not unique to me. I've spoken to many, many people, and it seems to be an exceptionally common theme. They are looking for somebody else to heal them. They are not looking to heal themselves. And they go through this thinking it'll be fun, it'll be exciting. Just want a bit of this. I just want a bit of that. You know, some romance. I want someone to take me out for a meal. I want somebody to make me feel I'm special. There's nothing wrong with those feelings, but handing over direct control of fixing yourself to somebody else and hoping that they will have your best interests in heart to the same degree that you should have your own best interests at heart is at best a little naive. So it's not that it doesn't work for some people. You know, get back on the horse. Certainly, the beginning of my book on resilience starts with me being forced to metaphorically having slipped abseiling off a cliff and ended up with a rope round my neck and having been hauled up and lying there bleeding, being pulled up and having it rewrapped and going off you go again. And whilst it worked, and I'm still here to tell you about that 40 years later, that's not the best way of learning. It's definitely not the best way of learning because it breaks some people. And what you're looking to do is not survival of the toughest in a dating world. You're looking for people to learn a bit more about themselves, learn the language. You don't want to put a brand new driver on a main road in a car in the same way as whilst it will have worked for a few people when they're little, they hop in granddad's truck and drive around the farm. That's not how we want all the drivers to learn to drive in the world. And I think online dating is a little similar, and making sure you take care of yourself is a little similar.
I'm looking forward to reading your book. It's going to be fascinating, and thank you very much for sending over the one Substack article. I found it really quite fun and interesting. Um, I've gone through some of the same experiences that you have, and so it's something that we should sit down and have a beer and chat about at some point in time. Mark Smallwood, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. I was going to have a whole conversation with you about Putin and Trump that you wrote about as well, but we've run out of time. We'll have to come and do that again another time.
Next time.
Remind
Next time.
everyone how
Look
they
forward to it.
can access some of your thoughts and your reading, your writing, and also access your leadership training if they so desire.
Thank you so much, Brian. So people can find me on LinkedIn. If you look up Mark Smallwood in the UK, you'll find me. I crop up number one on the list. I've checked. I've just started publishing articles on Substack. So what I'll do is I'll send it across to you, and perhaps you'd be kind enough to put that on the podcast. I will promote the podcast also. And if you find me on LinkedIn, you'll be able to find plenty of links that would take you to my writing and thoughts. And the initial way for coaching, begin a conversation, ask some questions, see if we get on, see if you feel there's value. And if there is, love to work with you.
Mark Smallwood, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to repeat for you all a speech that I did at my daughter's wedding. A really wonderful experience that I had, and I want to share it all with you. It's got, frankly, some of the keys that Mark has been chatting about in regards to her and her now husband, fiance, and now her husband's life. And it was a very special opportunity for me to share my thoughts about marriage, about their union, about their struggles together, and how they've survived and flourished and are traveling around the world with great adventures. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to share it all with you. We've got a long weekend here in Canada and Ontario, so everyone enjoy some time and think about, if you got a chance, some of the things that Mark and I have chatted about today, about finding your purpose in life, about commitment, about this fluidity, about working hard. No one cares, and so work hard, and also that I think sometimes I think too often we're looking for pleasure, happiness, uh, love to come from somewhere else when we've really got to think about creating that at least happiness within ourselves. And I think that that's one of the keys of what Mark and I have been chatting about. Thanks for joining us. Here we go. Back in 2 minutes with a speech to my daughter.